Have you noticed how most mornings don't really feel like a beginning? You wake up, and within 30 seconds, your mind is already halfway through your to-do list. You check your phone, notifications, news, noise. You haven't even brushed your teeth, and somehow you already feel behind. We've gotten used to mornings that feel like a race we didn't sign up for. No space, no pause, just go. But it doesn't have to be that way. In this video, we're not going to romanticize anything. We're going to be real, because some mornings suck. But even in that mess, you can reclaim something sacred. I'm going to walk you through 6 simple Buddhist practices that anyone can do, no matter how busy or chaotic your life feels. These aren't rules. They're reminders of how to come back to yourself before the world pulls you away again. And the last one, number 6, might shift how you see your relationship with food, your body, and the pace you live at. If you're the kind of person who wants calm without quitting life, presence without leaving the city, hit subscribe now, because this is the kind of space we're building here. No fluff, no pressure, just honest ways to live more intentionally, starting with how you wake up tomorrow. Let's get into it. They say the first thing you do in the morning is what you worship. And most of us, we worship our to-do lists, our notifications, our need to catch up before the day even starts. But the Buddha taught something else, something quieter, something most of us have forgotten. He said, "Your breath is your first teacher. Return to it." And you return to yourself. Imagine this. It's still early. The world outside hasn't fully awakened. The air is cool. Soft light presses gently through the curtains. And in that space between sleep and movement, there's a doorway. It doesn't lead out into the world. It leads in. That doorway is your breath. In one old monastery in the northern mountains of Vietnam, a young monk once asked his teacher, "Master, why does my mind feel like a storm the moment I wake up?" The teacher didn't answer right away. He simply handed the boy a small wooden bell. "Ring this when you open your eyes," he said. "And for 3 breaths, do nothing but feel the sound fade." The next morning, the boy tried. He rang the bell. He listened. He breathed. And in those 3 breaths, the storm was still there, but he was not swept away. You see, the breath is not just air. It's presence. It's permission to not rush, to not be pulled into 10,000 directions before you even leave your pillow. When you wake and go straight to your phone, your mind immediately enters a battlefield. But when you wake and meet your breath, your mind enters a temple. So how do you begin? You don't need incense or chants. You don't even need to get out of bed. Just this: open your eyes, close your phone, place one hand gently over your chest. Inhale slowly, count to 4, hold, exhale even slower, count to 6. Do it 3 times. Do it as if your soul depends on it, because it does. You might not feel peace right away. That's okay. The goal is not to feel better. The goal is to feel what is there, without running. And the breath is your safest doorway for that. Let me tell you about Min. She was a busy mother of 2, project manager, a night worrier, someone who used to open her eyes and panic. Always behind, always tired, until one retreat in Plum Village, a monk said to her simply, "You don't need more time. You need more silence within your time." Min returned home and changed just one thing. Every morning, before coffee or children or Slack messages, she gave herself 3 deep, conscious breaths. 1 week passed, then 2. And though her schedule hadn't changed, her mind had. Now she moves slower, but lives deeper. And her mornings feel less like a war, and more like a walking meditation. So tomorrow, before you get up and go, try just being. Place your hand on your heart. Feel it rising, falling, reminding you you are here. And that is enough to begin again. The breath is the bridge between the body and the mind, between forgetting and remembering. Thich Nhat Hanh. There is a kind of magic hidden in the morning that most of us miss, not because it's hard to find, but because we never slow down enough to see it. The steam curling up from a cup of tea, the golden hush that wraps around the windows, the quiet hum of life beginning again. But most of all, there is this fragile, sacred invitation, whispered into the silence between your breaths. Are you grateful to still be here? We often think of gratitude as something that comes after we get what we want, after things go right, after we've succeeded, achieved, healed. But in Buddhism, gratitude is not a reaction. It's a practice, a way of seeing the world before anything has happened at all. It's not the result of a good day. It's the seed of one. Son, a monk's morning prayer. There is a story about a monk named Ananda who each morning, before the sun would rise, would step out into the garden barefoot. He would face the east, place his palms together, and simply whisper, "Thank you for this life, even if it hurts today." He didn't wait to feel good. He didn't wait for perfect weather, or good dreams, or a pain-free back. He gave thanks, before the day even proved itself worthy, because in his heart, being alive was already enough. And that's what makes gratitude so powerful. It's not optimism. It's not toxic positivity. It's the ability to see beauty even in the broken. To say thank you not just for the fruit, but for the seed, the soil, the storm, seedling the hidden suffering of not enough. Let me tell you a modern story. Her name was Lynn. She was a high achiever, the kind who planned her day the night before and woke up with a checklist already forming in her mind. She was always trying to get ahead, more sales, more growth, more self-improvement, more everything. But one morning, she found herself sitting on her kitchen floor, holding her coffee, unable to breathe, not from sickness, but from emptiness. She had everything she worked for, and still it felt like she was missing something silent, something sacred. When she spoke with a monk at a local temple, he asked her one question: "When was the last time you said thank you for what you already have?" She couldn't remember. Leaf fluttering in wind, practicing morning gratitude, the ritual. In Buddhism, gratitude is not just a mood, it's a form of insight. It is the realization that nothing is guaranteed, everything is connected, and this moment is a gift that will never come again. So how do we bring this wisdom into our mornings? Not through big ceremonies, but through small, sacred rituals. Cherry blossom ritual number 1, 3 things. Before you leave your bed, before the emails and noise and news, close your eyes and name 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be profound. A warm blanket, the sound of your child breathing, the body that still carries you even when you criticize it, the tea leaves waiting to be brewed, the fact that somehow in this vast cosmos you woke up again today. Say them gently. Say them as if each one is a small prayer. Thank you for this roof. Thank you for this breath. Thank you for one more morning. Blossom ritual number 2, write it down. If your mind feels cloudy or distracted, write down your gratitude. Use a notebook or the Notes app on your phone. Not for perfection, not for public sharing, just for remembering, because the mind forgets, especially in chaos. But writing reminds you that there is still light, even if the clouds haven't cleared yet. Candle ritual number 3, gratitude for people. This is the most powerful one. Each morning, close your eyes and think of one person who has helped you directly or silently. Could be parent, a teacher, a friend who stayed during your storm, the stranger who smiled at you when you felt invisible. Then whisper to yourself, "May you be well. May you be happy. Thank you for walking a little way with me." You don't need to text them. You don't need to post about it. But feel it. Let it soften your heart. This is compassion in motion. This is the kind of gratitude that heals the world. Cloud with rain gratitude in dark mornings. But what about the mornings when you wake up heavy? When you don't feel grateful? When the pain is real, the grief is fresh, and the silence feels more like loneliness than peace? That's okay too. The Buddha never asked us to pretend. He only asked us to be present, even with the suffering. On those mornings, you can say, "I'm thankful that I can feel. I'm thankful that even pain means I'm still alive." because even sorrow is proof that your heart is still open. Diamond with a dot scientific backing, spoken gently. Modern studies support what monks have practiced for centuries. Gratitude increases serotonin and dopamine. It calms the nervous system, improves sleep, strengthens the immune response, deepens empathy. But beyond the science, there is something even more sacred. Gratitude makes you more human, more awake, more connected to the thread that ties us all together. Woman in lotus position, a breathing practice with gratitude. Let's try this together. Sit comfortably. Place your hand on your heart. Close your eyes. Inhale slowly. Exhale gently. Now bring to mind something you're grateful for. Anything. A sound. Person. A memory. Let the image arise. Breathe into it. Say silently, "Thank you. You are part of my peace today." Do this for just 1 minute. 1 sacred minute. Open book, The Teaching of the Leaf. There is a teaching in Buddhism that says, even the leaf that falls gives thanks for having danced in the wind. Gratitude is not about what we get. It's about what we recognize has already been given. Your body, your time, this moment. Sunrise, a morning that begins with thank you. So tomorrow morning, before the noise takes over, before your phone steals your silence, pause, breathe, and say 2 simple words. Thank you to the sunrise, to your body, to the path that brought you here. And as you rise to begin your day, let that gratitude be your foundation. Because when your heart begins with thanks, everything that follows becomes an offering. Health is the greatest gift. Contentment is the greatest wealth. And faithfulness is the best relationship. The Buddha, gratitude softens the heart. But compassion gives it wings. If gratitude is the way we say thank you to life, then compassion is the way we say, I see you, I feel you, I'm here with you. And the most beautiful part? In Buddhism, compassion is not something you give. It's something you are. When your defenses fall, and your heart is allowed to breathe without fear. The morning we forget ourselves. Most mornings we rush, not because we want to, but because we think we have to. We rush to beat traffic, to meet deadlines, to be enough. And in that rush, we forget the simplest person, who needs our love the most, ourselves. We live in a culture where it feels selfish to rest, guilty to say no, wrong to speak kindly to ourselves, unless we've earned it. But Buddhist wisdom teaches us this. You don't have to deserve compassion. You only have to recognize your own suffering. Person in lotus position, the story of the angry man. There's a story from the life of the Buddha. A man, burning with anger, approached him in public. He shouted insults. He spat venom with his words. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the Buddha's reply. But the Buddha, he simply looked at the man and asked, if someone offers you a gift, and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong? The man didn't answer. It remains with the giver, the Buddha said. And then, calmly, without judgment, he added, your anger is not mine to carry. This is the heart of compassion. It sees suffering beneath the surface, but doesn't add more to the fire. Says, I will not pass this pain along. It ends with me. Sunrise over mountains, compassion as a morning practice. Imagine starting your morning like this. Before you look in the mirror, before you remember your flaws, before you compare yourself to yesterday or someone else, you sit quietly and speak to yourself as you would a wounded child. May I be kind to myself today. May I forgive myself. May I allow myself to rest when needed. This is not indulgence. This is healing. Because when the inner voice becomes gentle, the world becomes gentler too. Wheel of Dharma, the 4 immeasurables. In Buddhist teachings, there are 4 heart practices that are said to be immeasurable, boundless, infinite, unshakable. Loving kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, empathetic joy, mudita, equanimity, upekkha. Together, they form the foundation of a peaceful heart. But compassion is the doorway, because before we can love all beings, we must first stop punishing ourselves. Seedling morning ritual, self-compassion meditation. Try this the next time you wake up feeling unworthy, behind, or broken. Sit up in bed. Place your hands over your heart. Feel the warmth of your palms on your chest. And breathe slowly. Then say quietly, "This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is part of being human. May I be kind to myself in this moment." Repeat it 3 times, or as many as you need. You are not fixing anything. You are simply allowing kindness in. Broken heart, but what about guilt? Maybe you feel like you don't deserve compassion. Maybe you've made mistakes, hurt people, said things you wish you could take back. The Buddha never promised perfection. He only promised a path. Like a mother who protects her child with her life, he said, so should we hold all beings, including ourselves, with boundless compassion. That means even your regret deserves tenderness. Even your shame deserves a soft place to land. Yarn a thread of story. Lana's healing. Lana used to hate mornings. She'd wake up already judging herself for not meditating enough, for not being zen enough, for snapping at her partner the night before. But then she read a passage from Thich Nhat Hanh. Compassion is a verb. It's not a feeling. It's a practice, a choice, a way of living. So each morning before coffee, she wrote a sentence. I forgive myself for rushing. I offer myself patience. I begin again. Slowly, something shifted. She stopped seeing herself as a project to fix and started seeing herself as a person to hold. Now her mornings feel like a gentle conversation instead of an interrogation. Repeat button. The loop of compassion. When you practice compassion toward yourself, you naturally begin to see others with softer eyes. The barista who forgot your order? Maybe she's exhausted. The driver who cut you off? Maybe he just got bad news. The colleague who snapped at you? Maybe he's carrying something he doesn't know how to name. Compassion doesn't excuse behavior, but it understands the hidden suffering beneath it. And from that understanding, we become less reactive and more rooted. Waterwave, a breath-based practice, loving kindness. Let's do this together. Just for 1 minute. Sit, close your eyes. Think of someone you love deeply. Picture their face. Now breathe in and say in your mind, may you be happy. Breathe out, may you be safe. Next breath, may you be free from suffering. Now think of yourself and say the same words, even if it feels strange. May I be happy. May I be safe. May I be free from suffering. The heart may resist at first. That's okay. Repeat gently until the resistance turns into release. The mirror practice. Stand before your mirror in the morning. Look at your own reflection, not with critique, not with comparison, but with curiosity. Place your hands over your heart and whisper, you've made it through so much. You are still here, and that is enough. Say it even if you don't believe it, because belief follows repetition. And soon, the mirror won't feel like a place of judgment, but a place of reunion. Scroll a note from the Dhammapada. Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal law. What if we replaced hatred with self-criticism? What if the war within us could finally end, not through victory, but through compassion? Sun with face, a morning of compassion. So tomorrow morning, alongside your gratitude and your breath, add this one practice. Speak kindly to yourself. No matter what the inner critic says, hold your heart as you would a small bird, trembling, fragile, beautiful, because the way you speak to yourself in the morning will echo through every word you say to others. And the world, it doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more people who love themselves into kindness. Be gentle. You are meeting yourself again. For the first time, every morning, there's something almost sacred about the early morning. Not because it demands anything from you, but because it offers a kind of soft permission. It doesn't ask if you were productive yesterday. It doesn't ask if your life is impressive. It simply asks, how do you wish to show up today? In a quiet monastery in Lumbini, not far from where the Buddha was said to be born, Young monks begin each day not with a schedule, but with a whisper, a vow spoken silently to themselves before the sun fully rises. Not a goal, not a resolution, just a soft promise. Some days it's as simple as, today, I will listen more than I speak. Other days, I will walk slowly, even when I feel rushed. These small intentions, unspoken and unwritten, somehow shape the energy of their entire day, like invisible strings pulling their actions into alignment, one gentle breath at a time. And perhaps that's the hidden power of intention. Not that it controls the future, but that it shapes the lens through which we move through it. Back in the city, we often wake up differently. Our first thoughts are lists. Our first emotions are pressure. Emails, meetings, traffic, a rush to prove, to earn, to not fall behind. But rarely do we pause to ask ourselves who we want to be in the middle of it all. Not what we want to achieve, but how we want to feel, how we want to treat others, how we want to move through conflict, stress, and even joy. There was once a man who came to the Buddha, frustrated that no matter how much he achieved, he still felt hollow inside. He said, "I've built success, I've gained respect, but every day I wake up and feel like I'm running from something." The Buddha looked at him gently and said, "When your actions are not rooted in intention, your success will have no soul." He then offered a practice. Before you begin your day, ask yourself not what you must do, but how you wish to be. This wasn't about doing less. It was about doing everything from a place of presence. Intention is like setting your internal compass before the winds of the world start to blow. Even if the path is chaotic, you don't lose your way because you remember what you stand for. Emma, a schoolteacher in her 40s, used to dread her mornings. They felt like a sprint. From the alarm to the coffee, to the rush out the door, she was already exhausted before the first class even began. But one morning, something shifted. She read a line from a Buddhist text. Clarity is not given by the world. It is chosen in silence. That day, instead of checking her phone, she sat by her window, closed her eyes, and asked herself, "What energy do I want to carry into the classroom today?" Her answer came as a whisper, patience. She didn't try to meditate perfectly. She didn't write it down or share it, but she carried it in her heart. When the students arrived noisy and distracted, she smiled. When they struggled with their lessons, she remembered patience. And somehow the day moved differently. Intention does that. It doesn't erase difficulty. It simply helps you respond with the version of you that you most want to live as. Some mornings, your intention might be compassion. Other days, resilience, or quiet strength, or radical gentleness. There is no right answer, only the truth of your heart in that moment. To practice this is simple, but its impact is profound. When you wake up tomorrow, before the world asks anything of you, sit up slowly, breathe, and listen. Ask yourself, what matters most to me today? Not the tasks, not the noise, but the tone of your soul. How do you want to walk through this day? Is it with kindness, with presence, with courage, with softness? Then say it, softly, inside. Carry it like a stone in your pocket, not heavy, but grounding. And every time you feel overwhelmed, reach back for it. Repeat it, as if calling your true self back home. One of the monks once said, "Intention is like planting a flag inside your heart, so that even when the fog comes, you still know where you belong." It's not about being perfect. It's about choosing the direction. Again and again, there will be days you forget. You'll get lost. You'll feel pulled in 1,000 directions. That's okay. The practice is not to never stray. The practice is to always return. To the breath, to the heart, to the vow you made in silence, before the world got loud. And when you do, you may find something remarkable, that the most powerful part of your day wasn't what you did, but the energy behind it. And that energy began with a quiet choice, a whisper, a breath, a vow no one else needed to hear. But the universe heard it, and it shifted, just slightly, in your favor, because when you begin with intention, the whole world begins to respond to the quiet truth of who you are. In the next part, we'll return to the body, not as an object, but as a sacred space, a space to move with care, to feel fully, and to walk the earth with mindfulness in every step. Before the day truly begins, before the city finds its hum, before the clock starts ticking louder in your ears, there is a sacred space. It exists between the breath and the first movement. And most days, we miss it. We swing our legs off the bed. We stretch half-consciously. We stumble toward the bathroom, toward our phones, toward our responsibilities. But what if the very first movement of your day wasn't a rush, but a ritual? What if, before you began to do, you allowed yourself the grace to arrive? That is the essence of mindful movement in Buddhist practice. It is not about burning calories. It's about honoring the sacred relationship between the body and the present moment. It's not about fitness. It's about presence. In one of the monasteries in Chiang Mai, every morning before breakfast, the monks walk slowly in single file, their robes whispering against the air, their bare feet kissing the earth. Each step is placed with intention. Each breath is felt. And even though they are moving, it feels like the world is standing still. They call it walking meditation. But truly, it's more than that. It's a reminder. This body is not just a tool. It is a home. And movement can be the way we return to it. There is an old story of a monk who once asked his teacher, "Why must we walk slowly, like we have all the time in the world?" The teacher smiled and replied, "Because we do not walk to arrive. We walk to remember that we are already here." In our modern lives, we're often running from deadlines, running toward goals, running through mornings like they're in our way. But in Buddhism, there is deep reverence for slowness. Slowness is not laziness. It is intimacy with life. To move mindfully means to allow your body to speak the language of stillness. It means noticing your feet touching the ground, your spine unfolding after sleep, your hands rising gently to wash your face, as if you are waking the Buddha inside you. Let me tell you a story. Her name is Mari. She used to wake up every day, feeling like she was already behind. Emails, children, a body that hurt in the mornings from years of neglect. She loved the idea of mindfulness, but meditation felt too still, too silent, too far from her daily reality. Then, during a silent retreat, she was introduced to walking meditation. It was nothing dramatic, just a slow, quiet walk through a garden. Before breakfast, the teacher guided her to feel the heel, the ball, the toes, with every step. At first, she felt ridiculous, awkward, too slow, too aware. But after a few days, something softened. Her steps became smoother. Her heart began to match the rhythm of her pace. And for the first time in years, she felt in her body, not just inside her mind. She took that practice home. Now, every morning, before the house wakes up, Mari walks barefoot in her small backyard. Not to exercise, not to get anywhere, but to greet herself. She says it changed her mornings. But more than that, it changed her relationship with her body. Because instead of judging it, she began listening to it. That's the gift of mindful movement. It transforms even the most ordinary gestures into sacred acts of connection. You don't need a garden. You don't need incense. You don't even need to walk. All you need is attention. The movement could be a gentle stretch, a bow, reaching for a cup of tea with your full awareness, brushing your teeth slowly, standing in the shower and actually feeling the water, even lifting your arms as you breathe in and lowering them as you breathe out. That too is a meditation. Buddhist monks often say, when you walk, just walk. When you sit, just sit. Above all, don't wobble. It sounds simple, but it is profoundly difficult in a world that worships multitasking. To move with mindfulness is to say, I am not a machine. I am a living, breathing being, and this moment is worthy of my full presence. There's also something deeply healing about syncing your movement to your breath. Try it now. Inhale slowly and lift your arms gently over your head. Feel the stretch, not forcefully, just enough to greet your body. Hold the breath for a moment, and then exhale slowly, letting your arms drift back down like falling leaves. Now repeat. Do this 3 times, and then ask yourself, did I just move, or did I just pray? There's a beautiful teaching in Zen. When the body moves without awareness, it is just repetition. But when the body moves with full presence, it becomes liberation. Movement is where the body meets the soul. It's where silence becomes action, and action becomes a return. And in the morning, this can be your anchor. Before the day pulls you outward, before the tasks, the demands, the expectations, let your body remind you that you are not just here to perform. You are here to experience, to touch, to feel, to remember your own aliveness. There's a young monk in Kyoto who has a small ritual he performs every morning. He bows 3 times, once to the Buddha, once to his teacher, and once to his own body. When asked why he includes the last bow, he says, "Because this body is the only temple I have, and it wakes up every day, even when my mind doesn't want to." How often do we thank our bodies for carrying us, even when we mistreat them? Mindful movement is a form of gratitude. That does not require words. It simply asks us to be here, as we are. So tomorrow morning, before the coffee, before the scroll, before the rush, pause. Roll your shoulders back, stretch your fingers, place your feet gently on the floor, and let your first movements of the day be like water finding its riverbank. Fluid, present, real. Even just 5 minutes of moving slowly, with your breath, can change the entire tone of your day. Not because it solves anything, but because it changes the way you meet it. You will still have meetings. You will still have responsibilities. You will still have chaos. But your steps will be different. They will be chosen, rooted, softened by awareness. And sometimes, that's all it takes. A step, a breath, a body no longer rushing, a soul returning home. In the next part, we'll share the final practice. One that nourishes not just your heart or your breath or your movement, but your entire life. Because the way you eat is also the way you live. And the quiet ritual of mindful eating might be the simplest, most overlooked path to presence, peace, and deep joy. By the time you sit down for your first meal, the day has already begun its pull. The world outside is moving. Your phone is vibrating. Your mind is already halfway into the afternoon. And food becomes just fuel, a necessity, something to get through, not to savor. But in Buddhist teachings, eating is not just about nourishment. It is a sacred act, a daily ritual, a living meditation that connects you with the earth, with countless unseen beings, and with the deepest parts of yourself. In Plum Village, the Zen monastery founded by Thich Nhat Hanh, meals are taken in complete silence. Dozens of monastics sitting together, bowing to their bowls, chewing slowly, with eyes lowered in reverence. You don't hear cutlery clashing or small talk. You hear breathing, chewing, swallowing, the sound of presence itself. Because in that space, eating becomes a dharma practice. It is not about what you're eating. It's about how awake you are while eating it. Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "Chew your food as if you're kissing the earth." And when you eat like that, every bite becomes a reunion, a return to now. Let me tell you a story. There was once a monk named Samten. He had lived in monasteries for decades, practicing fierce meditation. But his biggest struggle wasn't with anger, or sleepiness, or even doubt. It was with food. He ate quickly, always had. Even in silence, his mind raced with memories and cravings. One day, his teacher asked him to take a week, to practice only one thing, to taste the first bite. That's it. Not the whole meal. Not enlightenment. Just the first bite. So he did. The first morning, he sat before a simple bowl of rice. He breathed in. He picked up one small spoonful. He brought it to his lips, slowly, and when he placed it on his tongue, he realized something. He had never actually tasted rice before. Not like this. He chewed slowly. He noticed the texture, the warmth, the way it dissolved with breath. And in that moment he wept. Not because the food was extraordinary, but because he finally was. He was there, fully, for the first time in years. And that is what mindful eating gives us. Not better food, but better living. It brings us home, to the place we're always trying to get to, through busyness and distraction, the present moment, the body, the breath, the gratitude. It's all right there, in a single silent bite. You don't need to be in a monastery to eat like this. You don't need a perfect kitchen, or a vegan diet, or handmade ceramics. You only need awareness. You only need to be where you already are. Tomorrow morning, when you sit down to eat, whether it's a simple slice of toast, a bowl of oats, or just a cup of tea, try this. Before the first bite, pause. Look at the food. Notice the colors, the textures, the steam rising like incense. Now breathe in, gently, and think for a moment, where did this come from? The soil, the rain, the hands that harvested, the truck that delivered, the person who prepared. Hundreds, maybe thousands of lives touched this food before it reached your hands. Now bow your head slightly and say inwardly, thank you. Then eat slowly, not performatively, but honestly. Chew, taste, feel. Put down the spoon between bites. Notice what your body is doing. When it's full, when it's satisfied, when it doesn't want more. This may feel strange at first, because we've been trained to eat while working, while scrolling, while watching something. But eating while eating is revolutionary, because it reclaims a space that was meant for peace. There's a woman named Sasha who once shared her story. She was a nurse, always on the move, always tired. Breakfast was usually something between traffic and stress, half-eaten sandwiches, lukewarm coffee, until one day, after reading a passage from a Buddhist text, she decided to change just one thing: to eat breakfast at her table. No phone, no rush, no multitasking. The first week, she said, was uncomfortable, too quiet, too weird. But the second week, she started to feel it. The stillness, the joy of just sitting with her food, like an old friend she'd forgotten to visit. Now she says that 5 minutes of mindful eating have done more for her anxiety than anything else she's tried, because they give her one precious thing: ownership of her own pace. And that's something this world doesn't often give you, but you can give it to yourself. When you eat slowly, you're not just feeding your body, you're feeding the part of you that longs to be seen, heard, tended to. And in Buddhism, this act of seeing is an act of love. Even Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, when you prepare your food, do it with joy. Smile while cooking. See it as a meditation. Because if the energy going into your food is loving, then eating becomes a continuation of that love. And in that sense, eating becomes a mirror. It reflects back how you live. Do you rush? Do you criticize? Do you overfill, trying to feel something deeper? Or do you pause? Do you breathe? Do you bless your own life with the quiet power of appreciation? The way you eat matters, because it is often the first place where your body and mind meet, with full awareness. So eat like you are praying, not to a god in the sky, but to the miracle of being alive. Let the taste of fruit remind you that sweetness exists. Let the warmth of tea remind you that stillness can be held. Let the crunch of bread remind you that every day is fresh, every moment edible, if we only stop to taste it. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present, because a quiet breakfast can become the foundation for a luminous day, and a single moment of awareness can nourish you more deeply than the richest meal. So tomorrow morning, when the world is still half asleep, sit down, bow your head, and eat slowly, as if your heart were listening, because it is, and it's hungry for presence, for peace, for a life that is fully lived. one gentle bite at a time. This is how we begin again, not with grand gestures, not with new plans, but with breath, gratitude, compassion, intention, movement, and the sacred act of tasting this life. This is the practice. This is the path. This is the morning ritual of a mindful soul. And wherever you are, however broken or beautiful your life may feel, you are welcome here. You belong in this moment. And this moment is already enough. You've breathed. You've bowed. You've listened. You've remembered. Not because a voice told you how, but because something deep inside you was always waiting to be heard. Each ritual you've just walked through is not a task to complete. It's an invitation to live more gently, more fully, more awake. So tomorrow morning, when the light finds your face and the noise tries to pull you back into forgetting, pause, place a hand over your heart, take one conscious breath, and remember the first moment of the day belongs to you. And if you begin it with presence, everything that follows will begin to soften. If this journey brought you peace, subscribe, but not out of habit. Do it as a vow to return here to yourself again and again until each morning feels less like survival and more like a quiet prayer. Only you can whisper, "Welcome home,"